These fellows here are the amazing honey ant. You can only get them around this desert country in central Australia. They work by hiding underneath the ground, and these fellows here are the storage factories. These other little blokes on my finger here, they're the workers. They've got to get up on the ground surface, climb up the trees, collect the pollen and the nectar, and then back underground to feed their mates. During the hard times in the desert, these workers come down underground and feed off these larder factories. It's a great system. Not bad stuff either. Proper sweet one, yeah. For the women of Papunya, the honey ant has special significance. It's a central part of their dreaming, their tradition. And these honey ants tell us a couple of symbolic things about living out here in the desert country. Firstly, they're an excellent example of survival. Like the traditional desert people themselves, they're very well adapted to survive the countless droughts. They also tell us that out here in the desert, you can get good tucker. Papunya's on the fringe of the McDonnell Ranges, the mountains which stretch out to meet the desert to the west of Alice Springs. The arid zone, the desert country, covers almost half of the Australian continent. Some of the most sparsely populated country on Earth. 50 years ago, nomadic Aboriginals lived off this land. It's sometimes hard to imagine that anyone could have lived out here at all. This is your typical central Australian desert country. It's typified by all the spinifex here and the stunted mulgas and eucalypts and the acacias and the hakeas, the whole lot. But not all Australian desert is like this. Over towards the east in the Simpson, it's all sand dunes, and over in the west, you tend to get your gibber deserts over there. You look around here now, and you think that because there's patches of green all over the place, it's not doing too bad, but that's not the case. They had a bit of rain around these parts a couple of weeks ago, and the vegetation has reacted to that. Deep down inside, the desert is hurting because it's dry, and they haven't had a wet season here for some years. Without traditional skills, an outsider would be very lucky to survive out here for more than a few days. Aboriginals had to achieve a fine balance in this environment. Their numbers were carefully regulated by the availability of food and water. And in dry times like this, there's also fierce competition for the food that is available. You learn pretty quickly that the early bird catches the worm. Here's a really good example of what I'm talking about. This is one of the capara species, And you can see here the old fruit that the birds got at early this morning, probably about daybreak while I was still in the swag. They're no good. There's plenty of green ones left around the place. Up here, if we're lucky, we might be able to get a ripe one. Yeah, there's one there. Here we go. You can tell he's a Capparis because of the joint in the stem here. And also on this particular species, the ribs that run down the outside of the fruit. I guess if I'm going to get him, I'll have to get up earlier myself. I'll just bust him open and show you what he looks like. There we go. Not bad, the pulp's quite sweet. Seeds are a bit bitter though. I reckon if you left him a couple more days, he'd be right on the mark. But if I did that, the birds would get him. Can't afford to do that when you're trying to survive. There we go, that's a little blue-tongued lizard. Traditional time spetters like this and goannas and lizards all through the desert country here we use pretty thoroughly for bush tucker. This little bloke, he's pretty harmless, he's just out having a bit of a sunbake. We just let him go. Here we go. In the desert, more than anywhere else, survival depends on finding water. You have to be aware of the signs and constantly on the move. It doesn't rain too often out here, so when you see it, that's where you head for, because the rain brings not only the water, but also food. And there are more permanent water indicators, the tribal road signs of the desert country. This is an engraving, it's not a painting, and what it depicts, it's the Aboriginal logo or sign for waterhole. Sometimes you get it with one circle or a number of circles, but it's very common right throughout the desert country. These sort of things you'll find popping up, particularly around waterholes. Looking around here, I'd guess that the waterhole will have to be up there in that gorge somewhere. Somewhere over there where they've got those rock figs, because that's also an indicator. There you go. That's the little rock fig. You always find him growing around rocky outcrops and escarpments just like this. And quite often, he's near a waterhole. Near the waterhole down there, about 50 feet below me. If we could trace the root system down, we'd follow it going right down through the cracks and the crevices, eventually ending up on ground level down there, sucking up the water. These little fruit here are edible. The birds down there, those little finches flying around the water, eat them all the time. But they're pretty dry, and because of that fact, the birds require that water all the time throughout the day. Aboriginal people, a little trick for those finches. They break off a leaf like that, or a few of them, and because the fig has got a very white latex type sap, they spread it along the branch. And when the little finches came up and landed on the branch, they get stuck to it, couldn't fly away. So the Aboriginals were able to